Okay, we're going to tackle two chapters today, 6 and 7. It's going to be kind of a long lecture. I apologize. The first chapter is chapter 6 is about basic interpersonal skills. Okay. As we learned previously, a good counselor displays warmth, empathy, respect, and genuineness. Additionally, a good professional must accurately observe, effectively attend, and actively listen. This is the bit. This is the trick. Um, we think of counseling as giving advice, but the reality is it's listening. It's hearing. The more you talk, I think I've said this before. The more you talk, the less your client talks. And what you want is to get your client to talk. Observing means noticing all behaviors that accompany communication. So we're not just talking about them talking, we're also talking about them reacting. And that's what we're looking at. This type of communication is known as nonverbal communication. Facial expressions, breathing patterns like sighing, gestures, movement, and posture, all of these are quite important. And you, as humans, of course, we have been watching people all of our lives, and we do this all naturally anyway. Sorry, I needed a drink this early. Being a good observer increases understanding of what clients are communicating. It can supplement what your client is telling you verbally. It may verify what is being said or contradict it. And of course, there we go. If a practitioner gets conflicting messages, the nonverbal meaning is usually closer to the actual meaning. Practitioners often comment on contradictions, and that's one way to create an opening. They have created the opening, of course, and all we're doing is we're looking at what they have said and how they are acting, and we are seeing the contradiction, and that can create a dialogue between you and your client. If you're having trouble making the client speak as they should, good observers pay special attention to facial expressions. Facial expressions can show any emotion. If the client shows no emotion, known as the flat effect, it may indicate depression. Other indicators of depression include little body movement and slumped posture. Mere sadness, on the other hand, is much more animated. That's when you cry, that's when you sigh, that's when you make noise, that's when you look down, increasing the amount of fluid in a person's eyes, of course. This is what we're talking about. This is mere sadness. It's not depression. Depression, you can't emote. You're you don't have the ability. And so if somebody's crying, then they're not depressed. If somebody's making noise, they're probably not depressed. If they're moving around, depressed is that. That's the flat effect. Stress is expressed by muscle tension, movement, shallow breathing. Looking away may indicate thinking, remembering, hesitant about talking, being hesitant about talking. Clenched fists must be interpreted by the context of the situation and may indicate stress, frustration, anger, or anxiety. The counselor must remember that gestures are culturally developed, and therefore the knowledge about the individual's culture is quite important. I was in a faculty meeting yesterday, and someone said something that was culturally inappropriate, and it was quite obvious that everybody was cringing. Everybody was cringing, and he tried to rationalize what he had said, but there's no rationalization for being culturally insensitive. So one of the things that you need to do is make sure that you understand your client's culture and understand their culture as best you can. When someone experiences strong emotions, their skin tone may change color, darkening or looking rosier than usual. Skin tone change usually starts at the chest and moves up the face. Facial expression, what emotion do they seem to be displaying? Do they have tears in their eyes? Is the mouth turned up or down? Is the brow wrinkled? Are there circles under the eyes? Are they smiling? Eye movement and eye contact. Are they looking mostly at the floor? Are they looking mostly at the ceiling? Are they looking around the room? Are they looking directly at another person? Are they staring? Do they have the flat effect? If we're looking for depression, then we're looking for the flat effect. Body position, how are they sitting? Are they leaning back? Are they slumped over? Are they slouched? Are they upright and stiff? Are their legs crossed? Are their feet flat on the floor? Are their legs curled under? Are their legs crossed? Are their ankles crossed? These are things that you're looking for. Body movement, did they hardly move at all? Did they move slightly? Did they fidget most of the time? Did they nod their head or swing their legs? Did their movement change during the interchange? Breathing patterns, did their breathing seem normal? Did they often sigh? Did they take deep breaths? Did they breathe in a shallow way? Muscle tone, are their fists clenched? Is their jaw tightly closed? Are they slumping? Is their face slack? Has their muscle tone changed during the interchange? One of the things that you will run into is people that really don't want to come in and talk to you. These individuals will have tightened muscles. They may have fists clenched. They may have tight jaws, and this is because they're angry. Well, they're showing anger. Potentially, they're showing anxiety, but they're probably showing anger at having to come in. Gestures, what were they doing with their hands? Did their hands stay in their lap, folded together? Were their hands moving around most of the time? Were their hands in tight fists? Did they make circles with their arms or hands? Did they show their palms? That's supplication if you show somebody your palms. If their leg is bouncing up and down, it probably means it does mean that they're nervous. Uh, Skin tone, did you notice any change in skin tone? When a group therapy situation, when in a group therapy situation, it is important that the practitioner observe everyone in the group. They should not only observe the individual speaking, but how the members of the group are reacting to what the speaker is saying. When the practitioner scans the group, it also encourages the speaker to speak to everyone, not just the practitioner. Often in a group situation, there will be two leaders, and the two can trade off assignments of observation. It is necessary to observe the people in large groups. This can be done by looking for telltale actions of individuals or groups of individuals. Are the people fidgeting? Do they have facial expression? Are their facial expressions incongruent? Are their shoulders hunched? Is their mouth pinched? Are their eyes closed? Usually, when somebody has said something that makes me angry, my lips get really small and thin, and I press them together really hard. I'm trying to keep from saying something. As I get older, of course, I am less likely to not say something. Attending involves being totally focused on the client. Attending isn't as easy as it seems. Often, when we are listening to someone, we are hearing what they are saying, but we are trying to compose what we are going to say when it is our turn to speak. While there are some culture, and this is a reality. This is a reality. I've had lots and lots of conversations in my time, and a lot of times I can see them. I can see in their eyes that they're composing what they want to say to me, and they're not really listening to what I say. While there are some cultural differences in the way that someone shows attending, for the most part, it is shown by leaning slightly forward in a relaxed, comfortable position, sitting in an open, accessible way. Face expresses appropriate concern, and that is how you do it. Facial expressions are extremely important. The facial expression should be congruent to what the client is relating and experiencing. For most people, this comes naturally, but some are taught to smile or laugh at adversity. Maintaining regular eye contact is another way that you can show that you are paying attention. People from Asia and those from Northern Europe tend to prefer more peripheral gazes, finding the direct stare too intense. Any distracting behavior, including taking notes, should be avoided as it distracts from the process. They may see fidgety movement on your part as disinterest, impatience, or boredom. Another way to communicate involvement is through minimal encouragement. Minimal encouragement involves repeating one or two words a person says, nodding, saying something in the affirmative like uh-huh, uh-huh. Listening involves fully focusing on what the other person is trying to communicate. Listening actually goes beyond attending. Most of us are composing in our own minds as others talk to us. But listening is total absorption in what the client is saying, and that is the way you need to do it. And this is one of the reasons why I say that the more they speak, the better off you are. Listening isn't just hearing the words, but conveying the understanding of the implications of what the client is saying. While listening, the practitioner uses minimal encouragement to get the client to continue disclosing. Listening involves noticing the client's communication style, including tone, volume, speed of delivery, noticing pauses, silence, changes in patterns of speech. Communication styles vary by culture and between families. Some are direct, some are clear, some are easy to understand. Some use jargon or colloquialisms, narrative style, confused circular manner, jump from one topic to another. They do not complete their thoughts. Of course, these are all different communication styles. Communication can only take place if you allow the client proper time to express their thoughts and feelings. Silence is good for the client as it allows them to garner their thoughts. Many practitioners are uncomfortable with silence and want to fill it with their own words. And of course, this is something more common in the white community. White people like to fill the air with noise. They don't. They call them pregnant pauses. Actually, is when no one is speaking, and it makes them uncomfortable. So this is something to remember if you have somebody that grew up who's white, or if they grew up in the white community, that potentially it's going to be difficult for them to handle silence. These individuals may fill empty silences with nonsense, or with silliness, or something, or anger. They may try to control the situation with anger. Even when practitioners are fully focused on listening, they may disinterpret the client's words. A client may use emotional words differently because of cultural or familial imperatives. Interpretation must be explained by the client. What the client says affects the practitioner. It is important for practitioners to listen to their own responses as a way of further understanding what the client is saying. If a client is speaking in a monotone about something very sad and the practitioner does not experience any personal response to this, it is important to determine whether the client is allowing himself or herself to feel the feeling, or the practitioner is detached. Warmth is expressed through demeanor, concern, acceptance, tone of voice, posture, listening carefully. Touch can be a way to expressing warmth when used appropriately, but be really, really careful. Some people are touchers and some people aren't. When I was teaching up on the Northern Plains, on a reservation up on the Northern Plains, that tribe they were Northern Plains tribe, so they touched a lot. They were big huggers, uh, handshakes. However, down on the Navajo reservation, not nearly as much hugging. Certainly not nearly as much hugging. Handshakes maybe, but most likely they just people just stay away from each other pretty much. So touching, this is something that you need to be aware of. One of the professors that used to be at Dene College was a Canadian, and Canadians are kind of standoffish. Probably the only group that is more standoffish than them are people from the Midwest. And strangely enough, I'm from the Midwest and she's from Canada. So when the two of us talked to each other, we were like a whole room apart because our personal space was so large. And we're not touchers. I don't think I probably shook her hand once or twice, but that's about it. We're not big touchers, okay? The appropriate expression of warmth can depend on many diversity issues. Gender influences how warmth is expressed. Particularly, this is influenced by various religious or spiritual beliefs. Racial and ethnic differences in cultural norms influence the expression of warmth. The power differential between different people can confuse how expressions of warmth are interpreted between a child and an adult, a doctor and a patient, or a person with perceived economic power with one who does not have this. Expressions must be genuine. Due to the way the brain functions and thousands of years of history, individuals are quickly able to pick up warmth that is not genuine. It is important for the practitioner to observe the client's response as a way of judging how warmth was experienced. Warmth evaluation scale. Level 1, the practitioner communicated little or no concern for the client and appeared cold, detached, stiff, and or mechanical. Level 3, at least half the time, the practitioner verbally and non-verbally communicated concern and caring appropriate to the unique needs of the client. Level 5, the practitioner's facial expression and posture consistently communicated concern and caring appropriate to the unique needs of the client. This is a French movie, and it's if you don't like French, if you don't like movies that are foreign where you have to read subtitles, then this is not the movie for you. But the interesting thing about Meetings of Anna was the facial expression of the lady playing Anna, and this is her. And of course, there she is. She's on a train a lot. And the reason she's on a train is because she is Belgian and she's traveling. She's a producer and she's supporting or she's trying to get people to show her film. And she's traveling from one place to the other. Into Europe, you travel, most people travel by train. And they've been doing this for ever since the end of World War II. Lots of trains all over Europe. So she's traveling by train. So there she is smoking, and as you can see, she has a fairly flat effect. There she is once again with the flat effect. Interesting movie. She's trying to decide whether she uh, is in love, and wherever she goes, she keeps running into old boyfriends. But the individual that she is potentially in love with is actually a woman. So she'll be going against cultural norms, I guess. So there she is thinking, and there she is thinking, and there she is thinking, uh, and there she is. After she has decided that she is going to pursue the relationship with the lady that she's uh, her potential lover. And that is the end of chapter 6. Why do I show you this movie? Because her facial expressions are so extreme. Not extreme. That's not the right word. They're so telling. So it's a really good movie. It's kind of interesting. Her wandering through Europe. She goes to Berlin and she goes to Rome and she goes to London. It's mostly in French, but when she's in London, they speak English, if I'm not mistaken. And she's Belgian. She has an argument with her mother. It's kind of funny. No, it's not. It's a French movie. What can I say? Okay. Okay. Chapter 6, Chapter 7, preparing for the client and ending a session. How do we do that? Okay. Ooh, there's somebody that's not happy. The practitioner must get ready to meet the clients. They must gather referral information, they must gather forms, and whatever supplies they need. They need to have these before they get to or the client comes in. The purpose or agenda for the meeting should be clarified. Practitioner must consider the client's needs and the physical arrangement of the building, the waiting room, the meeting room. Is there any reason why this isn't going to work? Do they not have access to the building? Is the waiting room doorway too small for them to get through? Is the meeting room not appropriate for whatever problem they may potentially have? If the client has any physical limitations, then the practitioner must make appropriate alterations. The client's culture should be considered to ensure that all appropriate steps are taken to make the session as beneficial as possible. If the practitioner does not have a working knowledge of the client's culture, then it is appropriate to research the culture with the understanding that such writing is often stereotyped and inaccurate. And of course, what they're trying to do is discover these things. Usually, people are fairly they don't mind educating you about their culture. Usually, that's the way it is. Some people get upset if you don't understand who they are and how they think. But other individuals, of course, are happy to teach you about their culture. Just like since I've been at Dene College for 5 years. And people have been very nice about teaching me about the Dene culture. Practitioner needs to understand how the client may feel about the first meeting. They may feel embarrassed. May feel hesitant. They may feel uncomfortable. And this is what we were saying in the last chapter when we were dealing with the last chapter. The practitioner must put away all distracting thoughts so that they can concentrate on the needs of the client. Beginning the first meeting appropriately is essential to the client-practitioner relationship. First impressions have lasting effects on future interactions. The greeting is essential to connecting with the client. I don't know if you looked at this picture, but he's got dead flowers, and they're dry. You can't say much for his tuxedo. Oh my. Okay, anyway. Ground rules need to be clarified, the purpose of the meeting, the length of the meeting, any special considerations that need to be addressed. When greeting the client, be aware of the loudness of your voice, eye contact, and how you address them. Issues of privacy and confidentiality are important in how you first meet your client. If you must identify a person in a waiting room and cannot guess who your client might be, you can say very quietly, "I am Jesse Melendez. Are you Mrs. Chin? Are you Ms. Chin?" Of course, if your name's not just Jesse Melendez, you certainly don't want to say that. And if her name's not Ms. Chin, you don't want to say that either. If a receptionist is able to identify your client, you must just identify yourself to the client. Be aware that many clients experience some shame in seeking help, so confidentiality is very important. The practitioner should invite the client to introduce themselves. The practitioner should determine how the client wants to be addressed. Some people don't like to use their first names. Using a last name in any circumstance shows respect. Now, this is really kind of interesting. When I was growing up, this was Indiana in the 50s and 60s. Graduated from high school in 1967. At that time, if you used somebody's last name, it meant you wanted to fight them. So you didn't call people by their last names. You always called them by their first name. If you couldn't remember their first name, calling them by their last name was not the best thing in the world to do. You might get in a slugging match if you're not careful. People tend to feel more comfortable with professionals who fully explain the process, what they are going to do, what will be expected of each person that are participating, the purpose of the meeting, and limits of confidentiality. When beginning meetings with children and adolescents, explanations will need to be made that they can understand. Special issues of confidentiality will need to be covered. Education about your role is important, as well as what you expect of them. How you will include their parents or caretakers also needs to be made clear. There's a reason for this, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute. First, meetings with groups and families. Be sure that members of a group are acquainted with each other. Clarify ground rules for talking. Explain what the role of participants will be. In families, you may want to ask how the members want the family to be different. Confidentiality needs to be discussed, and an agreement reached about how information will be shared outside the group or family. For subsequent sessions, some practitioners like to start their sessions by allowing the client to initiate the conversation, thus setting the direction of the meeting. They may say, "Where would you like to start? Let's begin by discussing the progress you have made since our last meeting." Confidentiality is one of the most important elements to address at the beginning of the first meeting. You need to assure clients that information shared with you will be confidential, secure, not shared with others unless they sign a consent form. One of the hardest areas for clients to understand is mandated reporting of possible harm to self or others, suspected child abuse and neglect, elder abuse. Begin your discussion of confidentiality by covering the legal limits of your state. And of course, each state is different. Explain the boundaries of confidentiality. Most agencies will have a statement of confidentiality and informed consent that clients must sign during their first appointment. If a client is mandated by the court to see the practitioner is required to report back to the court. If the client is considered a minor, the parents or guardians usually have the legal right to know what happens in a session. Each state has their own laws regarding sharing information with parents. Many practitioners will only disclose information if the child's behavior is a threat to self or others. Possible problems the minor could disclose: being sexually promiscuous, using drugs excessively, threatening to run away, having been abused or neglected, feeling suicidal, and feeling homicidal. Groups create additional issues in confidentiality. Confidentiality must be discussed during the first meeting. Most practitioners recommend that the group's members agree not to discuss information covered in the meeting outside the group or with anyone in the group after the meeting has ended. Many organizations require administrative contracts, which may include detailed descriptions of the nature and the limits of confidentiality, explanation of when disclosure is required by law, what to do in case of emergencies, payment terms, confidentiality of records and email communications, rights of the client to review records, telephone and emergency procedures, cancellation policy, information about the practitioner's qualification, training, education, and licensure. Other information that the client needs: payment. They need to know how to make payments and what is adequate. Emergencies, telephone or email contact, how contact between sessions will be handled, cancellation policies, and length of meetings. The closing of a session is just as important as the opening minutes. The practitioner may want to discuss possibility of future meetings, what has been covered in the sessions, request feedback. Ask a client what has been helpful, support the client's courage. When we're closing the session, we need to ask a client about what has been helpful, support the client's courage. Keep in mind that different cultures have different expectations. Closing statements that you might use. How would you like to end today? We have 10 minutes left today. This seems like a good place to stop today. We've talked about some important things today, although we need to end for now. It seems like it might be helpful to continue our discussion next time. We have 15 minutes left. Do you have any closing thoughts about our meeting today? Let's talk about what we have accomplished today. What did you find most helpful in our work today? I would recommend that we meet weekly for the next 4 weeks and then evaluate our progress. Does that plan sound okay to you? We are about out of time and have covered most of the points on our agenda. I think this is a good point to end. Shall we meet again next week at the same time? That should be a question mark. And that is the end of chapters 6 and 7. Okay, you need to get in, you need to get your histories in. You need to decide what kind of problems your character is going to have. You'll find that when we start counseling each other, or counseling each other's characters, that it will be beneficial for you in that it will teach you whether this is a direction that you really want to go as far as counseling is concerned. Of course, there are a lot of other areas in psychology that you can pursue. You don't have to be a counselor. You can be an industrial organizational psychologist. You can be a teaching psychologist. You can be a research psychologist. Um, the vast majority of people who have degrees in psychology become counselors. It's like 70%. I think that's the figure. Anyway, so this will give you an idea as to whether counseling is something that you will want to do in the future. And with this COVID-19 situation, things are constantly evolving, so we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like in the future. Online counseling may become the only way that people do counseling in the future, especially, we won't go into possible negative scenarios such as the twindemic, as they call the flu and the COVID-19. Also, I'll see you next week. Okay, get your stuff in.